In this video, we'll see how we can create a new table online and create this new contact. So if you go to the Back Endless website quickly, where you've logged in, you can see that we have no app tables yet. So you are able to go and create a new table by clicking the plus sign there and now naming your table contact or whatever, and you create it. And then you can see that your contact table will be there, and it asks you, do you want to add some columns? And you can add some columns, let's say name and so forth. So we can say name as a string, we can set a new column there, let's say a number as a string and so forth. So you can keep on adding your contact table here. So you'll see what gets automatically added to your table is the created and the updated fields there. Also in your data browser, you can see there's an object ID, there's an owner ID, there's created and updated. So what we essentially want to do in Java or in Android, we want to create a class called contact, and that class called contact will become my table online. And the fields in that class, which is name and number and object ID and created and updated, those become my columns. Okay, so I'm going to delete this here because we will create this table in coding, and that's a better way to do it so that you know that everything is set up correctly. So let's go back to Android Studio, and what we want to do next is to create a new class. So we're going to say new Java class, and we're going to call this class the name that you want to name your table. So I'm going to call this the contact table. Right, so that's the contact class, and we'll have a few variables there, or a few fields at the top, which will become our columns. So we'll have a name, string name. We'll have a name for our contact. We will have a number for our contact, and we'll have an email for our contact. Then also you saw online that we have some other fields that we can also basically get for every table that we create. So if we go back quickly, you can even see on your users table, you've got email, name, and so forth, but there's an object ID and there's a created and updated. So if you want to have access to these columns called object ID, created and updated, then you must add them to your class as well. You do not need to add them to your class, but these are generated or created automatically. So I'm going to include them just to include everything that we possibly can here. So I'm going to say private date, and that date must be of java.util, and I'm going to call it exactly the same that you see the spelling online, which is this spelling. So make sure it's created, private date, updated, and then we also have a private string object ID, and please note the spelling. So this object ID, for example, you can see the spelling. There's object ID, capital I, created all lowercase, updated all lowercase. So make sure that you type it exactly the same, and then you're basically done. So that's the contact class will become the contact table, and every one of these fields or variables that we have here will become a column in that table. So the last thing that you need to do in this class is just to right click and to say generate, getter and setter, select all of them and say OK. And I recommend you doing that instead of typing out your getters and setters, because we need the Java convention in order for backenders to work. So it must be, for example, get name must have the get keyword in front of it, and then the N of name must be capitalized. You can see get number, the same thing. So if you do not know how to type this out correctly, in any case, the faster route is to just say right click and generate. Now you'll realize that we do not have any constructor in this class. So this is exactly how we want it for Back Endless. If you do not provide a constructor for your class, the default one will be basically provided, and the basic one or the default one will set all the string fields or object fields to null, which include this string and date and string. Everything will be set to null right from the start, and then let's say you've got an integer or a double variable here, it will set that variable to 0, and if you've got a Boolean value, it's going to set that one to false. So that's what the default one does if you do not add any constructor at all. Okay, so now basically what we'll do is we create a new contact object, and then we use the setters to set the values. Right, so this is done for the contact class. Now if we go back to our new contact, you will see that we basically set up all the components, and then when the user clicks on the button, we want to do something. Right, so what do we want to do? Firstly, we want to see that the user is entering all the data. So let's just go to the layout again. It is new contact. So the user must basically type on every single one of those fields for a new contact to be made. So it's ET name, ET number, and ET mail. So we're going to test if ET mail dot get text dot toString dot is empty, if it's empty, or ET name dot get text dot toString dot is empty, or at the same time ET number dot get text dot toString dot is empty. So if any one of them, this one didn't autocomplete, there we go. If the user leaves open one of those fields, we will just show a toast there for the user and tell him to please enter all fields. Right, so that is basically it for testing that these fields are empty or not. So if they are empty, then we will fill out on the fields. The else part is everything is fine, and we will now start creating that new contact. So for the contact, we need a few variables. So I'm going to get the name from it. So that's ET name dot get text, get text dot toString dot trim, and we'll also get the email, and the email will be etmail dot get text dot toString dot trim, and then we'll also have string, what is the last one, the number there, that will just be the cell phone number, so we're going to call it etnumber.getText.toString.trim. So now we've got all the details that we want from this specific contact, and we can now start creating this contact online. So first, before we take the contact online, we're going to go back to our contact class that we just created, and we're going to create a new object of it. So I'm going to say contact equals new contact, and remember we are using the default constructor, so it's basically passing in nothing. Now on that contact, we're going to set or use the setters to set a few values. So I'm going to say, and remember you're basically only going to set the values that you want for that specific one, which is these. The created, updated, and object ID will automatically be there for you. So we will go and say set the name, and we pass in the name variable that we had there. Then we're going to say contact.set email, and we pass in the email that we got from the user. And then we're going to say contact.set number, and then we're going to pass in the number. And that is basically setting up the contact. Now just something else here. In our application, we're actually logging in, and we can create new accounts with the login screen. So what we can do here is to say, well, let's go to the application class, and then I'm going to add a public static variable here, and I'm going to call it, let's make it a backendless user variable, backendless user variable. So it's a public static backendless user, and the name is user. So it's in the application class. So to refer to it, I'll say application class dot user. So now the reason behind this is for every contact that we create now here, we can also link one of our users that's currently logged in to that contact, so that every guy with his own account will have his own set of contacts. So where do we need to do that? Firstly, if you go to your login activity and you go down a bit, and you can see here we have successfully logged in this person. So what we can do here is to then, here where we log in the person, we go to the application class and we say application class dot, and you can see there's the user, and we set this user to the response that we had here, and you can see it's a backendless user object. So now we know if the guy uses the login screen and he types his username and his password and he's into the app, we have our user that's in the application class set to that logged in user. So that's the one part where we can do this. If we log in the user, If we register a new user, it's not necessary. If we reset the password, it's not necessary. But also if we load and check if the user is already logged in. So this one is basically logging you in, and there we get the back endless user response again. So here again, we can go and say application class dot user equals this response. So whether the user is using the login screen to log in, or he's already logged in, then if it's already logged in, it will go to this part, and we also get a hold of that user so that we can set the contacts. Every contact will belong to a specific user. Okay, so we've got the application class response there, and just remember now that we want to also add maybe an email address for the user. So for our contact table, I'm going to add another field here. Let's say private string user email, so that we can get a hold of the user that's currently logged in, and we save this contact for that specific user. So the next time he logs in, he will only see his own contacts and not contacts of somebody else. Okay, so let's go to the new contact one again. Let's just go back to contact. We need to have a getter and a setter for this. So right click, generate getter and setter, choose it, say okay. So we've got get user email and set user email. So that's what we want to do now. So when we create a new contact, I'm going to add that also, contact.set user email. And the user email I'll get from the application class .user. That's the backendless user. And if I put a dot on that, you can see I can get the email for that user. So the email for that user, if we go back to the website, it will basically be this email field that we're returning. So we're using a specific user that's logged in to work with his contacts in that table. Right, let's go back to Android Studio. So now we've created a new contact. We set the name, the email of the new contact, the number, and the user to which that contact belongs. Okay, so now we can go into the background and start setting or creating this new user or this new contact. So I'm going to say show progress true to start showing the progress bar. Then I'm going to say TV load dot set text. Now remember TV load is, let me just see where we are now. Let's go to new contact. So TV load is the text view that will show with the progress bar. So we can set the text on it. Okay, so let's go back. We're going to say TV load dot set text, creating new contact. Please wait. Right. And now we can go into the background and actually save this new contact to the database. So we're going to say backendless dot persistence. So this is a bit different now. In the previous one we said backendless dot user service. So now we say backendless dot persistence dot save, and you can see there's two. This one is for Java, that one is for Android. So we first need to have the entity, and then we go into the background. So the entity is just the object. So we're going to pass in the object called contact there, and then the second argument, new async callback. Right, so now we have handle response again and handle fault. So in handle fault, if something went wrong, we will just go and say error and show that fault dot get message to get the fault. Just remember also to stop the progress from showing when you have an error. Now in the handle response means that we have been successfully, or we saved this contact now successfully. So now in this part is where we can tell the user, save successfully and whatever we want to do here. So I'm going to show a toast, and we will just say new contact saved successfully. Right, after that, it's now up to you what you want to do here, but we can go and set this to false. Remember, we are in this activity. So if the user clicks on create new contact, it will show the progress bar, create that new contact online, and then when it's done, what do you want to do? So in this video, what we'll do is we'll empty up these three fields so that the user can add a new contact. But you can also decide to close down this activity and it goes back to the main activity. So it's really up to you what you want to do. So what I will do here in my new contact.java, I will say, let's stop showing the progress, and then for et name, we're going to set the text to nothing So to empty up that edit text, and go to etmail and set the text also. Come on, set text also to nothing, and then et number dot set text also to nothing. Okay, and that is basically it then. So when the user has saved this new contact, we know then it's online, and we will show the progress while it's doing that. If it's done, we will say new contact saved successfully, and we close it down. So let's just see if this one works. Run this application again. So just before we look at the virtual device, you can see that even if I refresh here, I do not have any app tables there. So let's open up the virtual device and see when it runs. Right, so there the application starts. It's checking the login credentials, logging you in, please wait. So remember, by this time now, we've got the logged in user in the application class. So now if I say create contact, let's add a name there. Let's say John Rambo. Contact number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, doesn't matter. Please enter the contact email. Let's say johnr@gmail.com, and we say create a new contact. So now it creates the contact, creating new contact saved successfully. You can see that all the fields are cleared. Now you can see that we do not have that table here. So the very first time that you actually create or you add a new contact to that table and the table does not exist, you'll see it creates that contact table for you. So now we have that contact table. Click on it and you can see there's the email, there's the name, there's the number. Also, the user email for the guy that's currently logged in is chuck@gmail.com. Okay, so it's saved successfully. You can also see your object ID was saved and you've got something in created. So if you want to get the date where this was created, in coding you can just refer to that object and call get created or get updated. Right, so that's basically it for this video. We've got a new contact. We are able to create a new contact and then add that contact to the database online. So in the next video, we'll have a look at the list, the contact list, to show a list of the contacts that we have currently in our database.